Welcome back to the HBCU NFL Report, where we keep you guys updated on your favorite Black college football stars in the pros. I am Symone Stanley, as always, joined by Lute Williams. And Lute, we are back after a long time.
Yeah, you know, since the Super Bowl, we kind of been on hiatus, but I'm ready to get started, as I'm sure you are. A lot to report on early in the season, our preseason edition of the Black College NFL Report. So looking forward to it.
Let's get into it. So we are on the 53-man roster watch. Luke, where do we stand this year when it comes to HBCU player representation versus last year?
Well, last year when the season started, there were 31 HBCU players in the league. Going into camp, which began a little over a week ago for every NFL team, there were 45 players total. And that number is up because there are 11 rookie free agents who are in NFL camps all around the league, looking to earn their shot in the big league, so to speak. So the difference between those 31 from last year, many of them have come back. Many of those same 31 players are back, either the guys who played on the active roster as well as the guys who played on practice squads. But those rookie free agents, and we're talking about the Shaq Davises of the world out of South Carolina State, the Xavier Smiths of the world out of Florida A&M, Mark Evans, for example, out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. None of these guys got drafted. Only, as we know, and as you know, only one guy was drafted, Isaiah Bolden out of Jackson State, that went to New England in the draft. But 11 players are in camp, you know, with legitimate shots. And there's one change this year in the NFL we have to note. Prior to this season, after every preseason game, I think they're doing 3 preseason games this year, there was a cut down. They would cut down from 90 plus that they have now to 70, then they cut down. But this year, a new rule in NFL, they will cut down only on August the 29th, the final cut down to 53 players. There's going to be no, gradual cut down from 93 to 70 and 70 to 60 or whatever. But that's one thing that they changed this year. So guys will get plenty of opportunities based on that. You know, usually they could get cut after the first preseason game, but it looks like this year they will have a chance really to play out the whole preseason to try to earn a spot on the roster.
And that's big because if there's a player that's on the bubble, you know, a team might give them more opportunities to show what they can do versus one bad preseason game and you're cut. Now you have an option, you know, to show out against a different team, another week of practice under your belt. So that provides so much more opportunities to those guys on the roster bubble. But let's talk about how this show is going to go today. So we're going to start out with some recent transactions. Then we're going to get into some recent performances because we did have one preseason game that happened already, the Hall of Fame game. Then we're going to get into a few larger storylines to watch throughout the rest of the preseason into the season. So starting with some recent transactions, you know, we got to start with the good news. McCain III just signed with the Carolina Panthers. So former North Carolina A&T defensive back, he's back at home in the state of Carolina with the Panthers. He started his career undrafted out of North Carolina A&T. He was signed originally by the Broncos after the 2021 NFL Draft. Then he was back and forth between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Broncos. Spent all of last season with the Eagles. After the season, he got released from the roster. Then he was immediately picked up by the Detroit Lions. And then the Detroit Lions released him. And then he worked out with a whole bunch of teams. Now, it all came how it's supposed to come with the Carolina Panthers back at home.
Yeah, and you know, I live in Greensboro, so Mac's parents are a fixture at A&T games. They usually keep me up to date as what's happening, but it was hard to follow him because he had a tryout with Pittsburgh. He had a tryout with New England. You know, I was hoping the Steelers would sign him and add to our, you know, at the time we had 2 HBCU players in camps, 2 running backs, one from Virginia State, Darius Higgins, as well as Alfonso Graham from Morgan State. So I thought maybe we'd have a little HBCU party in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh didn't sign him. And as you said, he ended up signing with the Carolina Panthers. You're right, back home, just 90 miles down the road from Greensboro. And, it's going to be tough. I think even on game day, we had a story about what he's going to have to do in order to make that 53-man roster. But, this is a guy that came out of college with big numbers. He returned 3 interceptions for touchdowns at A&T. He was a star at A&T and has not been able really to catch on anyway. I think he only played in 2 regular season games, both of them against the Cowboys last year for the Eagles. So he gets another shot, and you're right. He's at home. And the interesting thing, one of the things, he is going to be on the Panthers roster with another A&T player, offensive lineman Ricky Lee, who's a free agent, one of those 11 rookie free agents that I mentioned. So he'll probably feel a little comfortable with another Aggie on the Panther squad. But we'll be rooting for him. Obviously, the kid has talent. If you remember, we go back, he did blow out his knee after his second year at A&T, going into his junior year. He recovered from that. And prior to that, he was probably riding very high in terms of being drafted. But coming off of that injury, he did not. I think he left after his 3rd year playing, and he didn't get drafted. So he's knocked around a little bit, not unlike a lot of HBCU players in terms of trying to find their bearings, so to speak, in the league. So good luck to Mac McCain. And, that's the big story about Mac McCain, the backstory. His grandfather was one of the Greensboro 4 that sat in at Woolworth's lunch counter back in 1960. So historic in many ways, him being back in Carolina. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how he does.
Absolutely. And now we have to get into some guys that were cut, but there's always more opportunities. Just like we talked about Mac, just because you're cut doesn't mean, one man's cut is another man's signing. You know what I mean? It's another team that can want you.
That's right. That's right.
But we got to talk about your Steelers, Luke. You guys just released Alfonso Graham, former Morgan State University running back. Alfonso actually tore his labrum at camp. It was announced that he was likely going to be out for the whole season, and y'all went ahead and cut the brother.
Well, we had to cut him. He was out for the season. We waived him. But everything I've read about from Pittsburgh says they really liked Alfonso Graham.
Y'all didn't like him enough?
Yeah. Well, he got hurt in preseason and practice. He went up for a pass, came down on his shoulder, and he tore his labrum. And, if you follow the NFL, labrum tears usually knock you out for a whole year. They have not given up on him. They really liked him. And he got his opportunity because he really shined when they had the HBCU camp down south. That was the thing that opened their eyes. And listen, I said this watching Morgan State a year ago. Alfonso Graham was a serious talent. Quick, fast. He led the MEAC in rushing. I'm glad he got an opportunity. He was very determined. Even the guys at the Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee Harris and others, have really been encouraging him to, stay focused. Don't give up because you hurt yourself this year. The Steelers really liked him. Interesting. I thought it was interesting that we brought in not only Alfonso Graham from Morgan State, but Darius Higgins, who was a productive running back out of Virginia State. He's still on the roster, Higgins is, even though from what I'm reading, he's likely not right now to be. He's like competing for that 3rd spot. In fact, Mike Tomlin likes to say, one bone, 2 people trying to get 1 bone, or 2 dogs trying to get 1 bone. And he was one of them. Graham, as well as Higgins, was competing with Anthony McFarland out of Maryland for that 3rd running back spot for the Steelers. So tough break for him. But again, like the kids are telling him, stay focused, don't give up. The kid really has talent, and I'll look forward to him coming back, trying again next year.
Absolutely. We'll have to keep our eye on that. Another cut, Chris Blair, which was a big story out of the XFL. Chris Blair out of Alcorn State University, a veteran. He's about 26, 27 years old. He spent time in the NFL before going to the XFL. He had a huge year in the XFL with the DC Defenders. The Atlanta Falcons ended up signing him. We actually was at training camp the other day, talked to Chris, and 2 days later, cut, waived, cut.
Yeah, and Blair is a kid. He put up big numbers at Alcorn State, big wide receiver, 6'4". He had been on the Green Bay Packers roster for a couple of years on their practice squad. never really got into any real game action, but a talented kid. I recently did a story about a guy out of Winston-Salem State named Oronde Gadsden, who kicked around in the NFL, on the fringes of the NFL, and then he went to the Arena Football League, and he had one of those tremendous seasons. Hoping Chris Blair could do the same, kind of break out and have somebody recognize him the way the Dolphins recognized Oronde Gadsden. But so far, no go, so to speak. So he'll still be looking for an opportunity. Like you said, he's 26, 27. He's been around the league for 5 years. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody else gives him an opportunity.
Yeah, I could definitely see another team picking him up, especially because the Falcons it probably wasn't Chris Blair's lack of talent. The Falcons' wide receiver room and their offense overall is crowded. So It was probably just a tough team to try to break into. But I'm sure it's another team out there that's looking for more wide receiver depth that will see Chris Blair. And now if he signs somewhere else, there's still plenty of offseason to get acclimated with the team.
Sure.
Same thing for Mac, him getting signed relatively early into the preseason. He has time to get adjusted with the Panthers before, we get into some real football. But let's talk about some recent performances. Isaiah Bolden, 7th round pick out of Jackson State University, the only NFL draft pick out of an HBCU this past draft, the 2023 NFL draft. He's making waves with the Patriots at camp. He's been getting a lot of reps. He had a pass breakup, and some people have even recorded him with an interception at camp. So it's good to see Isaiah Bolden sticking and staying with the Patriots. And when we did our after draft special or HBCU game day, we talked about how when it comes to the defensive back room with the New England Patriots, a lot of guys in that room were drafted by the Patriots. So when they identify a cornerback that they like in the draft, they usually wait for him to develop and let him stick and stay with the team. So that's a big sign for Isaiah Bolden when he tries to make that roster.
Absolutely. And, we already know this from the past few years. Last year, for example, with Joshua Williams, Jacoby Durant, if you get drafted, the way things go right now, if you're an HBCU player gets drafted, they see something in you. They know that you have either, in the case of these guys, speed, ability to cover. Isaiah Bolden, the only guy to be – and we were projecting that there could have been as many as 5 or 6 people drafted. And some of the people we projected are not even in camp, So I think Bolden certainly is one of the young guys that has an opportunity primarily, like you said, because he's been drafted. And the history of Bill Belichick and the regime there in New England. When they draft you, they have seen enough to you that you're likely going to stay on the squad. So that's a good sign for him. We'll keep an eye on that. When I talk about surprises this year, when I looked over the list, Shaq Davis we knew about, Xavier Smith we knew about. These guys had really popped during their HBCU careers. But, the one surprising guy I saw was Andrew Farmer out of Lane College. He actually led all of HBCUs last year with 23.5 tackles for loss. The LA Chargers, of all people, have picked him up, have him on their squad, on their 90-plus man roster for the preseason. He's a guy to keep an eye on. As we watch guys that got drafted like Isaiah Bolden, keep your eye on. He's one of them, in addition to the ones we mentioned, Shaq Davis, Xavier, Mark Evans, who is also in New Orleans along with Shaq Davis. These are guys that were high on our list in terms of being drafted. But Andrew Farmer is also a guy with the LA Chargers to keep your eye on.
Okay, and of course, once we get more preseason games under our belt, which we'll have this weekend, we'll be able to see these guys in action, and we'll have a lot more performances to update you guys on. But we have had one preseason game already, the NFL Hall of Fame game. The New York Jets went against the Cleveland Browns. We had an HBCU player on both sides of the ball, but it was undrafted rookie Claudin Cherelis.
Out of Alcorn State, yeah.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
I was waiting on you to say I wasn't right.
No, I think Claudin Cherelis, Claudine, I don't know, but
We'll hear his name called a lot more in his NFL career, and we'll be able to get it right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
and he did play well. You're right. He did play well. And there was that first preseason game. They held out a lot of the veterans, so he got a chance to really play. But, let's be clear. This kid really sparked and played well for the Braves of Alcorn State. I mentioned Andrew Farmer led all of HBCUs in tackles for loss with like 23 and a half. Charles had 18 plus last year for Alcorn State. So he's a guy that's capable, very capable, has shown that he can stick his nose in there. He's a linebacker. He'll stick his nose in there and make some tackles. So again, we said earlier, because they're not going to be doing these cuts, he'll be given every opportunity to make the Jets roster.
All right. Shout out to Claudin. And like I said, we'll be able to see Andrew Farmer, some other guys you mentioned, Xavier Smith, Shaq Davis, Mark Evans, a lot of those guys, including Isaiah Bolden, in action this weekend when we get the first week of preseason games. So next week on the show, we'll have more, actual non-camp stuff to update you guys on. But let's get into some larger storylines to watch. Jacoby Durant with the LA Rams. He was drafted by the Rams last year. He won a rookie defensive award for the Rams as well. He played in 13 games. He had 3 interceptions, a pick 6 against the Atlanta Falcons. He had a sack, a couple tackles for losses, really popped out with the LA Rams. And he is going to be expected to be in an elevated role this season because the Rams traded star Jalen Ramsey to the Miami Dolphins, really turning over the keys to the young guys, including Jacoby Durant, in the Rams secondary.
Yeah, last year we talked about only one player being drafted last year. The 3 that were drafted, or 3 of the 4 that were drafted a year ago, really made some noise. Starting with, if you want to, you can start with Jacoby Durant with his 3 interceptions. I think you make a strong argument. Who had the better rookie year between Jacoby Durant, Joshua Williams, who won the Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs, or James Houston with the Detroit Lions, who put up 8 sacks? That was a banner year. And really, I went into the postseason and the draft thinking that based on those performances, there would have been many more players drafted out of the HBCU ranks. It was disappointing, in my opinion, for only Isaiah Bolden to be drafted. But yes, Jacoby Durant showed in the time that he played. He was a very heady captain, leader of that South Carolina State team that upset Jackson State in the Celebration Bowl, shocked everyone with that. He was a key component of that squad, and he showed the same kind of poise playing last year. He didn't get a lot of opportunities, but when he did get in, like you said, 3 interceptions, one of them a pick 6. I don't know. Who would you give the vote for the rookie last year, the HBCU Rookie of the Year between the 3? James Houston, Joshua Williams, or Jacoby Durant? What's your vote?
I know who you want me to say.
What do you mean? I don't have the dog in the fight. Who you talking about?
Well, what I'm not going to say is Josh Williams, because where my allegiance lies, and that's with the Eagles. So I absolutely won't be voting for Josh.
I got you.
I would have to say James. I would probably say James Houston because of the fact he was withheld. The Lions didn't put him in until Thanksgiving. And when he came in, he popped off. And the Lions were this close to making the playoffs. And their defense was trash all year long. And you had a dog on the leash the whole time.
Right.
If you unleashed James Houston earlier in the season, shoot, y'all could have been in the playoffs. So
I bet you one thing, Symone, they won't make that same mistake this year.
Exactly.
Right. So
I think it would have to be James Houston because of that.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that all 3 of those guys, based on how much they played and how much they showed last year, Jacoby Durant, James Houston, as well as the other one, all 3 of them, Joshua Williams, all 3 of them. And we didn't even mention the kid, the safety from Kansas City that was drafted out of Cincinnati that was playing back there in the backfield with Joshua Williams. So it's going to be very interesting, not only to see how they play in their second year, but how these rookies that we're talking about, the one that was drafted as well as these free agents, as they get their opportunity to show their stuff.
Sticking with the South Carolina State Bulldogs, Shaq Leonard, 3-time All-Pro linebacker, out of South Carolina State with the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts have a lot of drama going on. I don't know if Shaq is going to end up getting caught up in that. We'll watch that. But the good news is Shaq, who battled injuries last season, only got to appear in 3 games for the Colts last year. He is back at practice making contact. So that's a huge step for him coming back from his multiple injuries, because I feel like it was more than just his back.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's probably, if there's a storyline for HBCU players, that might be the biggest one. He was probably, maybe along with his former South Carolina State teammate, Javon Hargrave, they were probably the two most high profile HBCU players in the NFL, guys who were really sparking most recently. We're not leaving out people like Teron Armstead, who is a veteran, the oldest player in the league in terms of his tenure out of an HBCU, out of Arkansas Pine Bluff. But those two, Javon Hargrave and Shaquille Leonard, were probably at the top of the heap when it comes to guys who were, let's say, all pro caliber, especially young guys. So yeah, him being out all year was really missing, because he's usually a perennial defensive player of the week from our NFL players of the week from the HBCU ranks every week. He would usually, double-digit tackles were regular for him. So for him to struggle with coming back, trying to get back to health, hopefully the time off has made him, you said he's doing contact. I hadn't really looked at how the Colts are saying what they're saying about him, because the big question was they were worried last year. They didn't want to bring him in when he wasn't back to 100%. So they rested him. I think they shut him down after the 8th or 9th game completely. So hopefully that rest will get him back to that all-pro caliber that he's played before his injuries a year ago.
And like I said, so it's a lot of drama going on in Indianapolis. We saw Jonathan Taylor star.
Right.
It really was Jonathan Taylor and Shaq Davis were really like the faces of the Colts. Now Jonathan Taylor wants to trade. He wants out. I don't know. Maybe Shaq want to,
Yeah, and I think before we got on the air, I saw that they're going to start the rookie Anthony Richardson at quarterback in this first game as they're playing this week.
Right.
But yeah, there is a lot of drama, because Jonathan Taylor, if Shaquille Leonard is the part of the defense for the Colts, Jonathan Taylor, who ran for like 1,800 yards and, I think close to 20 touchdowns, he was the real linchpin of their offense. And if they're really going to get rid of him, you think the drama is just going to be beginning.
Right.
But look, we'll take him. He can trade him.
He's not going to Pittsburgh. Absolutely not.
We'll take him if
y'all gonna be making trades like that.
We'll take Dalvin Cook. We'll take
If y'all were going to take him, why haven't y'all took him already? Because y'all.
I don't know. And it's probably not going to happen.
Right.
We grabbed Jerome Bettis one year when that was going on, contract problems. The bus came to Pittsburgh, but I don't know with Najee Harris already there. I doubt very seriously whether they want to bring in somebody of equal.
And y'all got Hagan. Y'all got Hagan.
Yeah, well, Hagan's. I told you, he's fighting for that third spot. The little kid from last year, Jalen, his name escapes me, but he was real excellent last year as a backup to Najee Harris. So they're really competing for that third spot. But no, the Colts do have a lot of drama, and they'll have more drama if they don't get Shaquille Leonard back, because he is the centerpiece of their defense.
All right, our last storyline. Titus Howard, former Alabama State University offensive lineman, signed a big deal with the Houston Texans. 3 years, $56 million. That was a few weeks ago, so shout out, a few weeks ago when me and Luke were still being held back, so we weren't able to update you guys on there. But, y'all saw it on the website. But shout out to Titus Howard. Sadly, well, he's got his bag already, but he ended up hurting his hand. So now they're saying he might be out a couple of weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe with that hand injury. We know the Texans went and drafted C.J. Stroud in the draft. And Titus, I'm sure, was supposed to be an anchor in protecting C.J. this season. So we'll have to monitor when he's coming back.
Absolutely. And I want to talk about Titus Howard, as you said, signed a big contract, big free agent. Big contract for an offensive lineman. Let's talk about some of the guys who moved around from last year. The first one is a sad one for the Eagle fans, like somebody I know.
First of all, we already talked about that.
Did we talk about Hargrave?
Yes, we did.
We talked about Hargrave.
We did.
He's at the top of the list in terms of people who are in new digs this year. He went from Philly, obviously, to the San Francisco 49ers. That's going to be interesting.
It's not going to be interesting at all, because we good. We got a guy in the draft. We got Jalen Carter. You know what I'm saying?
I got
We're
you.
fine.
Other people that moved, Bobby Price out of Norfolk State, had been at Detroit for the last 3 years. He's now in the Arizona Cardinals camp. He's out there with Antonio Hamilton in the defensive backfield for Arizona. Alex Taylor, offensive lineman out of South Carolina State, was at Cleveland last year, spent almost the entire year on the practice squad. He is now at the Dallas Cowboys. He joins those two FAMU players, Isaiah Land, as well as Marquise Bell, down in Dallas. Those are the three HBCU players in Dallas. Joshua Miles, who had a injury last year, really a condition that they said was threatening his career, and in his third year with Arizona, he is now, and he's down in Atlanta, along with Cordero Hodge out of Prairie View. He's now an offensive lineman out of Morgan State. And then Trent Scott, who was with the Steelers last year, was kind of a swing tackle for us last year for the Steelers. He's moved to the Washington Commanders.
Why y'all let him go? Since you want to talk about people letting people go?
Well, he was really a backup.
Whatever.
Yeah, we bring him in as a sixth offensive lineman and line him up as a tight end. He really but this will be his third team. He's kind of a journeyman offensive lineman out of Grambling. So those are the guys that are in New Digs this year. So, we'll keep an eye on them. We think it should be interesting. Obviously, Hargrave is at the top of the list in terms of joining an already very stout defense with San Francisco.
Is it very stout? Because we dropped 35 plus on them.
But you did. And it was still a close game. And, you think he could be a difference maker for the 49ers, you think? Because he got big money, too.
I think he will make a difference. Will he be a big difference maker? I don't think so.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. He's a dog for sure.
He is a dog, but
yeah, he's a dog.
Got to be able to stop the run.
Yeah. So the games this week, who we got tonight? You got your Eagles debuting against the Minnesota Vikings. You got
tonight. What are you talking about?
Isn't it tonight? Thursday?
No, our first game is against the Ravens on Saturday.
I'm looking. I thought the Eagles actually a Seahawk. The Seahawks are playing the Vikings
You're just so disrespectful to my birds today.
Houston's playing New England. Green Bay's playing on Thursday. That's those two games. And then Friday, Green Bay is playing Cincinnati. The Giants of New York are playing Detroit. My Steelers are playing Tampa Bay Friday. Atlanta is playing Miami. Washington, Cleveland, Denver, Arizona. And then coming up on Sunday, the Indianapolis Colts meet the Buffalo Bills. Tennessee plays Chicago. The Jets will play Carolina. Get a chance to see HBCU players on both those teams. Jacksonville and Dallas meet. And then like you said, Philadelphia is playing Baltimore in their first preseason game. So with a lot to pay attention to with all of these kids and see how they fare when, as they say, the bullets start flying for real. Absolutely. Well, we're going to keep you guys updated here on the HBCU NFL Report, Road to the 53-man roster. I'm Symone Stanley. He is Lute Williams. We are here with HBCU Game Day. Thank you guys so much.